Let's introduce one of the authors of the report, our newsmaker on the program today. Anmol Somanchi is with us. Anmol, thank you so much for your time. And it is a dramatic and a startling claim. And this is the sentence that really leaps out from the report. Billionaire Raj today makes India more unequal than British colonial Raj. Can you talk a little bit about how you came to this conclusion? Not so much as methodology, because I'm not an expert, but just this big conclusion that you've arrived at. Could you talk a little bit more about this?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Barkha. Yes, I think that's kind of the key headline for us, that the way economic inequality stands today in India, it's more unequal than perhaps it was under the British rule. Now, how do we do this? So the Indian government basically, and the British government, they've been releasing annual tax tabulations since 1922 that allow us to basically shed light on dynamics of incomes at the very top of the distribution. So as a result of these tabulations, we can go back all the way till 1922 to understand what was the share of national income that the top 1% was earning under the colonial rule, for instance. Now, when we do that, we see that in the interwar period, when inequality was the highest, around 1920, 22, the top 1% was earning around 22%, 21% of the national income. Whereas our latest figures for 2022, 2023 suggest that the top 1% earn about 23% of national income. So very clearly, this number is now officially higher than basically what it was under the colonial rule. At the same time, we also track dynamics in wealth inequality. Now, income and wealth are two different concepts, and so we track them separately. For wealth, our series begins in 1961. That's when the government of India started conducting these large-scale surveys that collect information on household assets, debt, etc. We combine that with some information on Forbes Billionaire list for recent years, and once again, what we find is that the top 1% has access to about 40% of the national wealth. That's a pretty staggering number, just if we look at it in absolute terms. So yes, that's the main finding. And the point is that inequality has been soaring since about the 2000s. And since, in the last decade, we particularly see top-end inequality, that is inequality within the top 1%, rising much faster than even before.
Sorry, talk a little bit about this idea, the middle class. I was struck by this when I was going through your paper. The middle class has always been the growth engine of India, the demographic dividend, the industrious, hardworking, innovative Indian that comes from the middle class. One of the points that your paper makes is that it's the middle class, as the inequality rises, that's actually being left behind in access or in terms of percentage of share of wealth. So talk about that, the impact that your paper finds on India's middle class.
So, I think first, one thing that's worth clarifying is what really is the middle class. So when we economists say what
we all identify culturally as middle class,
exactly,
but of course
that's a bit misplaced, I think. So I think the way we economists try to think, even for us economists, it's not really clear what the middle class is, first of all. So it's a bit, it's a bit rule of thumb. The way we do it is that we define individuals that lie between the 50th percentile and the 90th percentile in the income distribution as roughly the middle class. Now, what we see is that their share of the national income has been declining since the 1980s, both national income and national wealth. And it appears, of course, let's be clear, the poor in India are very poor. And it's not like, perhaps, economic growth has been happening, things have been getting better, but it's not like they've moved very fast ahead. So that's not what we are saying. But what we are saying is that the top seems to be really eating up the share of the middle as they are getting richer and richer. And so it's really, in a sense, what in an earlier paper, Lucas Chancel and Thomas Piketty called India's missing middle class phenomenon.